Hey folks, welcome to IT Rockstars. My name is Scott Miller. This is the podcast where we help IT businesses and managed service providers grow their business. We do that by speaking to sales and marketing experts in the industry, and we also speak to other MSP business owners and find out how they're running their business. On today's show, we've got John Watkins of inRsite, based in Florida, USA. We're going to speak to him about various things, but just before we do, I have to mention the book. This book is called BearTac SEO for Managed Service Providers. Now, the show is sponsored by this book. The show would not exist without this book. So if you're trying to generate more qualified leads for your MSP business, check out BearTac SEO. Perfect time to do it, John. It is coming up to Christmas, plenty of reading time. Welcome to the show. First question for you. Give me a background here onto inRsite and how you guys, how is the company formed? How did you form where you are now? And what part of the business do you play in?
Okay. Well, inRsite started as a PC break-fix shop in 2008. Just doing basic residential, laptop screen replacements, PC upgrades, virus cleanup, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Expanded to 2 and then 3 locations over the next couple of years. Eventually, I came on board right about 2012.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, we started a hard push away from the residential break fix and over to the managed services, focusing on small and mid-sized businesses. By the end of 2013, we had completely made the transition to an MSP model. We put a sign up on the doors, shut down our shops, and moved into a dedicated office space. From then on, it's been pretty steady growth. We started out with 3 guys, including myself, running the actual MSP. Since then, we've got to, actually, we just had a new hire last week, and we're at 9 employees now.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's been a struggle. It's definitely been a lot of work.
Yeah.
But it
is a lot of work running an MSP, sorry. Yeah. So you mentioned there back in 2012, you made the switch to from the break fix to the managed service, the monthly recurring revenue. Were you taken on specifically to help with that process, John?
I wasn't hired to facilitate that, but that was I could see kind of where the industry is going. When you can get a laptop and replace it for cheaper than the replacement parts on it.
Yeah. And you had things like the iPad coming out as well, didn't you, back then?
Right. Exactly. Disposable electronics now. It's you're not going to beat that. You're not going to repair those things. So we kind of saw the winds changing as far as that goes, and we already had a couple clients that walked in, businesses that just kind of walked in off the street and said, "Hey, can you manage our stuff?" We were actually using Kaseya in the early days.
Okay.
Just for maybe 24 endpoints at that point. But after we made that full transition, it's just taken off.
Cool. Okay, so during that transition period, what do you think the biggest lesson learned is, maybe for you personally in the business, but also the business as a whole? I know I interviewed, it was this time last year, we interviewed Carl Palachuk here on IT Rockstars, and he's got a book, Managed Services in 30 Days. And there are a lot of lessons to be learned within that book, but I'd like to know maybe what you learned yourself and part of that process of going from the break fix to the MSP model.
You have to make sure that when you're making that transition, that everybody on your team is 100% committed. If you have somebody, especially in upper management, who is trying to hold on to the old ways,
yeah,
it's not going to work out. It's just going to be a hindrance. And also at that point, you're going to start seeing flaws in your staff. Some guys that can work great as a bench tech just can't cut it on site or interacting with clients on a day-to-day basis. So you're going to have to get the proper training in place, the proper people in place, and make sure that you don't cut any corners when it comes to preparing your team.
Okay.
That's the biggest hang up that I found.
Yeah, and that's certainly not something that was covered in Carl's book. So it's a really good point. In my head, I guess I've done break fix, and the biggest sort of thing in my head is you're going from breakfix to this, from 3 retail sites, I guess, down to just completely pure managed services. Was there a financial risk there for the business? Basically,
Oh yeah.
not closing the shop, literally closing the shop, and having to find this monthly recurring revenue.
It was difficult, and it was definitely a struggle. One of our locations, the lease kind of lined up right with our transition, but the other ones were quite a ways out, so we had to factor in the buyout on that. We had to hire some new engineers with the proper skill sets and experience to be able to help us with the larger client bases. Instead of 2-3 person shops, now we're talking 30, 40, 50 people at a client. So we had to make sure that we had the proper people, but those people are a lot more expensive than a college kid running a diagnostic on a PC.
Okay.
There was definitely lean times during the transition.
So as part of this transition, was there acquisition of other IT companies or anything like that?
No.
Right.
We just cut off our retail side and focused all of our efforts onto the business services side.
Okay, cool. And John, are you involved at all in the sales process at all in regards to transferring maybe an existing breakfix business client that you had over to managed services?
I wasn't supposed to be.
Okay.
My career path has been almost exclusively on the technical side. That's the stuff I find interesting. But with a small business, especially one such as this, you can't really just hide in the server room if you wanted to grow. So many times I would go with the owner to the sales meetings, the pitches, the demos. And a lot of times, more often than I was comfortable with, especially in the early days, the questions would come to me with, how are you going to make our business run better?
Yeah.
And it was difficult to get over that intimidation of the sales side of things. But as long as you have a good product and you're confident in your solution, it really gets easier.
I'm trying to get into a little bit of detail here because I went through a similar process myself. What was the intimidation of the sales process? What actually was that? Was that in your mind? What was the...
Well, that's just a personal hang up. I don't like asking people for money. And even at the shop, if a motherboard went out and I'd say, "Oh, sorry, little granny, your laptop's going to cost $800 to replace because we have to get this Sony motherboard." I just didn't like that.
Okay.
But once I kind of got into the rhythm of it and I actually understood what we were selling did benefit the client,
yeah,
it builds up a little bit of excitement, and it turns that intimidation into a drive to want to help the client.
Okay. So are you still involved in the sales process now?
Yes. Generally, the owner will make the initial contact, go meet the people, see loosely what they need. I'll come in, kind of see specifically what they need, what kind of infrastructure we're going to set up, if it's going to be public, private cloud, whichever way we're going to go with that. And then we'll meet together and kind of bounce off of each other for different questions with the prospects.
Do you know how he makes that first initial contact? Do you know any part of his sales process or his marketing, how he gets his customers or his...
We have tried almost everything under the sun. Direct mail, AdWords, SEO, Marketopia, Mind Matrix, process. Every avenue has been explored. But especially in the last year or so, we've noticed that there's absolutely no better way to get a client than a referral from a current client. And it seems almost like an avalanche effect. We had one that referred us, and then they referred us, and then another referral. And a number of clients we made the mistake of never asking, "Hey, do you know anybody that could benefit from our services?" When we started asking that question, we started getting all kind of warm leads coming in, especially from other MSPs in the area that weren't making their clients as happy as they could have been. We actually got 3 clients from the same MSP over the course of about 4 months.
Yeah, it tends to be the case, isn't it? It's kind of lackluster service, and that's when they're thinking about switching.
A lot of technical guys that I've spoken with don't really understand that it's definitely a technical job, obviously, but customer service is the core of what we do. If you could be the best tech in the world, but if your clients don't want to call you when they have that problem because they just don't want to talk to you, then you're never going to make it.
Yeah.
You have to make sure that you're balancing your technical skill set with your customer service and customer satisfaction skills.
Yeah, you're definitely right there, John. And I've always seen it as it's almost like a communication piece. It's not even, well, for me, it's not even customer service. Part of the process. It's communicating, showing that sort of empathy with what the problem is, telling them sort of timeline or where you are in the ticket queue.
And you know that sorry to interrupt you, but that's another thing that a lot of MSPs struggle with. If we're going to be saying things to help MSPs.
Yep.
Communication cannot be understated. It doesn't matter if your PSA has a portal where the customer can log in. 9 times out of 10, they're not going to. They don't care about that. The emails, the calls, every time we onboard a client or every time we do a project, we have weekly meetings internally with our team, so everybody's up to date. We have weekly status updates to our client contacts, and we have monthly or biweekly, depending on the scale of the project, in-person meetings at the client site to make sure that they know us, they understand that we are investing in them, and that there is up to date on the project as is feasible. You don't want to overload them with technical jargon in every little sub-phase of a project, but you do want them to understand the broad strokes of what's happening. If there's any issues, you definitely want to be forthright if you do run into a problem. You don't want to where a client calls you and says, I haven't heard anything for a month and you're still billing me and none of your guys have been here. You don't want to have to deal with that.
Yeah, no, that would be a bad situation to be in. I haven't heard from you in a month. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. And then the other part to that is, when you are resolving the tickets the problems is actually communicating. I always find that when I've done this in the past is communicating what actually the problem was, how it came to be, and how you fixed it. And I always find that helps to some extent, depending on the individual at the other end of the call.
It's definitely a peace of mind for people to understand that this wasn't just this malware infection wasn't just a fluke. That there's not a problem in our security. It's just because Mary opened an attachment she shouldn't. And here's our training platform for phish threat, so that it doesn't happen in the future.
So what are you using for your training platform?
Excuse me. We use Breach Secure now.
Okay.
And then we use the Sophos phish, the fake phish training.
Okay. I haven't heard of them too. Breach Secure. Well, I have heard of Breach Secure, but the Sophos one, I don't think I have. I just currently looked at, it was no before. That a couple places. Okay.
Yeah, mid-next company.
All right. Just, well, we're kind of at the halfway point here, John. As I mentioned, this show is sponsored by the recent book that I wrote, Bear Attack SEO. So I'll just do a little segment in that. Now, Joe mentioned just there that the best sort of source that he's had for IT qualified leads is through other referrals for your business. Now, that is an awesome way to generate more business for your MSP, is through referrals, building up, business-to-business relationships, or going to your existing customers. I did a whole video on that it's on YouTube, three referral sources for your IT business that you can find. But for online methods of generating referrals, the number one way is through Google, I would say. And the reason that I say that is because you can be in front of your customers' eyes at the exact right time in the buying cycle. That is when they're actively looking for your services. You cannot do that through any other social platform, any social media platform, or anything like that. So the search is key, I would say, from an online perspective and run an IT business. And you can learn all about that in the book, Bear Attack SEO for Managed Service Providers. So if you have any goals for 2019, any sales goals, this book can help you get to those goals. Okay, John, we'll go on to our next set of questions here. Now, you kind of gave me a list of things that we could cover as part of this interview. Now, the few things that I've picked out here actually was the private cloud. Now, I'd like to hear about what your private cloud is, and how that differs maybe from the Microsoft cloud, and what's the benefits to the customers and the benefits to your business.
Well, in general, the private cloud versus the public cloud, you'll have, I don't want to make general statements because you could really, really mess up your company and your clients if you did it wrong. We've invested a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of resources into ensuring that we have the proper stuff set up from the beginning. But essentially, it's a VMware-backed cloud in a number of co-location centers across the country. Everything replicates through. We have the warm failover standbys in 3 different regions at a time. Same general concept as using Azure for, say, a terminal services server or a SaaS product.
Mm-hmm.
QuickBooks hosting, the basic stuff that you would do at any AWS or Azure platform. But we do it with our own hardware, our own direct management. One vertical that we've focused on pretty extensively is the medical vertical.
Okay.
And with the regulation and the penalties for not securing your data, a lot of providers are not comfortable with throwing all their data, possibly HIPAA compliant data, up in the cloud that they can't manage. They see the cloud as just an intangible thing. But really, what is the cloud except for someone else's server? So instead of putting on someone else's server, we put on a server that we manage, we run, we ensure that everything is properly set up, properly secured, properly isolated. We've had a higher, when compared to a direct region, like the East region, for instance, here, it's been out, I think, 4 or 5 times that I've seen over the last year. Since 2014, we've had 1 half-hour downtime,
Okay.
and that was when there was a major power failover during new construction. So it's a lot more stable for what we are doing. But I don't want to downplay the public cloud as a great resource. We do use that for failover and backup retention.
So is the private cloud, this Veeam solution that you've got, is this are these data centers that Veeam has ownership of, or are you hosting somewhere else?
Basically, what we do is we have a provider that owns about a dozen data centers across the U.S.
Okay.
We have 2 to 4 racks in each one of 4 actual data centers in different regions. We have one here in Tampa. We have one in Atlanta, Houston, and LA. So we rent the racks. We go in there. We do our own networking. Sorry, I got to pop up here.
That's okay.
Business never stops. But anyway, we have our own networking stack in there. We manage everything through private VLANs,
Okay.
keep everything isolated. And our clients, basically, depending on the level of redundancy they want, they pick their retention level for backups and hot standby replicates. Veeam is just a product that we use to replicate through VMware and back up our VMs.
So when you're going to your customers and you're telling them about this private cloud, are you playing it off against the public cloud offering? Or is it just, how are you, I guess what's the question I'm trying to ask here is, how are you proposing this to the customer? Is it something that you tell them about having this private cloud, or is it just part of your integrated business?
For most customers, it's kind of part of what we do.
Okay.
We have the option available for public cloud, but our private cloud is a little easier, especially for, like I mentioned, the medical providers. They want to be able, or they like to be able, to walk to a data center in their own city or region and say, okay, my data is on that specific server and it's secure and I can tangibly see that. The cloud offers this big kind of mysterious, almost scary concept to a lot of people. Having it more localized and run by local people that you know and you trust is a benefit that we've found a lot of clients are looking for.
Do you find that anyone has said to you before that there's maybe more risk in that at all? If it's a data provider that only has 12 data centers around the US compared to someone like Amazon or Microsoft. Has anyone mentioned that at all to you?
Well, it's definitely concerning, and we've had multiple back and forths. Every year, we still put our cost and our basically our availability of what we're able to provide. We stack that against the equivalent cloud platforms.
So it's a comparison. Okay.
We try to compare just to make sure we're not going down the wrong path, but we've had a better uptime than Azure in our case. The cost savings is significant when you factor out for the long run.
Yeah.
And really, you could completely screw up an infrastructure or a deployment on a cloud infrastructure just as bad as you could your public. There's plenty of people you can go on Shodan and just scan AWS subnets, and you'll find a ton of open things that shouldn't be open. It all comes down to how you configure it, how you manage it, and having the proper tools and the right resources to be able to make sure that you keep it secure and keep it running properly.
Okay, cool. All right, on to our next question here. Now, you mentioned a product here called BrightGauge. Now, I had a quick, like literally half a second look at their website, some sort of analytic type dashboard. What is BrightGauge and how are you using it within your business?
Oh, you pretty much hit it on the head. It's an analytics dashboard that has integrations with ConnectWise, LabTech Automate, Auvik, and QuickBooks, Smileback. Almost every MSP specific third-party product has a tie-in or can have a tie-in.
Okay. Is it something that you use for your customers or is it something that you use internally, these analytics and dashboards?
Both, actually. We have dashboards up in our NOC and our SOC for our guys to be able to see critical alerts or their ticket time metrics, timesheet data, anything that they want to see at a glance or anything that should be kind of in their face, like a server goes offline. We get an audible alert and it pops up in a big red warning box.
Okay.
Say, you need to look at this. But it also takes the analytics from LabTech as far as patch status for clients, backups from Veeam, basically everything that a client would want to see. It'll take it in a dashboard and it'll convert it into a report and automatically email that out. So our clients, back to the communication point, our clients get one of those reports about their actual live environment every month.
Okay. I don't want this interview to sound like a spot for BrightGauge, but it does sound like quite a cool tool. And the next one I had here was Auvik Networks. Now, I've listened to their, frankly, MSP podcast, so I kind of have an idea of what they're trying to do. But could you explain how you're using the Auvik product or solution? What pain point does it solve for you in your business?
Let me start out by saying we're not using Auvik to its full potential yet.
Okay.
It's one of those things that is a mile deep, but we're working on it. It is a great tool for deploying into a client site that's a little more complex, maybe someone that has a on-premise hypervisor of some sort, or a cluster. It'll monitor. LabTech and the RMM also monitors like services and things, but this does it in a way that is a little more intuitive.
Okay.
It also has a great network map feature, so you can see just by running the appliance, you can see where devices are plugged in on a switch, which VLAN is connected to which hypervisor host. It gives you a very detailed look on the basically through the OSI stack of everything you have on that network at that time. It also does a lot of cool things like backup configs from Cisco switches, and you can revert back to changes, compare things, SSH directly from the Auvik console. It's got a lot of cool things that anybody who manages a number of complex networks might want to take a look at.
Yeah, cool. Okay, yeah, I have heard about them. I'll probably get them on the show at some point just to kind of go over the tool in a little bit more detail. It does sound kind of cool and it might help. I'm certainly not a network guy. I'm more of a mouse jockey. That's what I call myself. So having a tool like that sounds like it could be a big help. Cool. Okay, John. So do you have, here's one that you probably weren't realizing I was going to ask you. What's your goals for 2019?
We've got a lot of them. We're moving into a new, larger office space. So we've got that entire migration going over. We're bringing on a number of new clients and also trying to upgrade our entire cloud infrastructure. We're a major upgrade.
What type of upgrade?
That we've been planning out for a full hardware upgrade, new SANs, new hosts. We're looking at a couple different blade providers. We're thinking about changing from using Dell MD SANs to, we've been checking out TrueNAS. Very impressed with that for our backup deduplication. So we're kind of expanding out as much as we can and building for the future.
What about your personal goals?
My project car running.
Your what, sorry?
Last year I bought a 92 Skyline.
Okay.
And about 6 months after I got it, the head blew. And since then it's been, piece by piece trying to get it back up and running, but it's getting there.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds like a really good goal to have. I would have no idea where to start with that. I like a bike,
Neither did I, but YouTube and a lot of the forums are great resources. So.
Anytime I have to touch my car, I'm like, if it's putting wiper fluid for the washers, that's about as far as I go. Give me a PC or a laptop or a server, and I'll go into that, but nothing mechanical. Cool. And you mentioned also the CRN MSP 500. What's your involvement with them?
Oh, well, it's a list of I think they surveyed about 10,000 MSPs, and then after they get the data, they quantify it, and the top 500 they give a little award ceremony to. They flew us up to Philadelphia, cool. Put us in some one-on-ones with some VIPs and some different vendors, and basically like a channel appreciation event almost. It was a good time, and I'm proud of our team for being able to grow from literally no MSP to one of the better ones in our area in a very short amount of time.
It sounds like you've come a long way in the last sort of 5 years from that sort of break fix 3 retail stores to where you are now. And with your private cloud, that's quite a feat. And then you're going through an upgrade as well. Okay, that's great, John. Is there anything else that you'd like me to ask before we finalize the interview?
No, I think that's pretty good.
Cool. Okay. Well, as I mentioned, you can purchase Bear Attack SEO. It's on Amazon, $9.99. It's worth every penny. Part of it, you'll find out all of the Google keywords you need to know as an IT business owner. 153 of them that I personally went through the Google search and come up with for yourselves. If you liked this video, please give it a like, thumbs up, subscribe, and all that good stuff. This is probably one of the final interviews we do for 2018. It's been a pretty good year at IT Rockstars. I hope you're planning your goals for 2019, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks, guys. Bye.